it gives me a great pleasure to welcome into our room, Circle of Influence, Billy Selekane, and Billy is South Africa's #1 speaker, and I'll say that he was the first speaker in Africa to be inducted into the World Speakers Hall of Fame. He was the first speaker who actually made earning money out of speaking in Africa a profession, and he's spent many years, well over a decade and a half, speaking, teaching, and training tens of thousands of people all around the world how to create success and the principles of success. And I know that he has a love, like me. He has a love for the African continent. He has a love for teaching and training, helping and building entrepreneurs. We share the same mission and vision in terms of taking the people that live on this continent from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset and realizing what we actually have available. So can you join me in giving Mr. Billy Selekane a big welcome to Circle of Influence?
Hey, Barry, good morning, and good morning to you guys.
Billy, good morning, my friend. How are you doing, bud?
I'm good. You know me, I'm good. I need to get some light. I need to get myself better light so that you guys can see me. Yeah, I think it's better light now. All right. Thank you very much for having me. We're going to have a bit of fun here.
Awesome to see you, Bill. So, Bill, why don't you kick off and tell everyone a little bit about yourself. Give us a bit of your background.
All right, guys, I'm a typical South African story, and sometimes I don't take it lightly by saying I'm a typical South African story. I was born in the dark days of this country. I grew up as a young man, very impressionable. Had 3 paths to choose from: either become a thief, a thug, become a Christian and steadfast, or become an entrepreneur. So at some point in time, I was dabbling between the 3. And then, I started my first business when I was about 9.5 years old. And at that time, because I was so young, it was not fashionable for a young black man to start a business. And I remember a lot of my teachers used to say I'm a crook, because I was charging people money for a service. And they used to shut my businesses down. It was quite an amazing thing. But from a very early age, I'd always known this path of reliance, that each and every one of us is ultimately the architect of their own destiny. So I've always been the kind of person that never wanted to depend on anybody. And in 1989, I had the most amazing awakening when I first met a professional speaker on stage who was a South African but based in the US. And at that moment in time, I knew exactly what my life was going to be. I knew that I was going to become a speaker. I knew that I was going to inspire people. The biggest question then was the how. So from 1989, it took me over 10 years researching and trying to find my path into being able to share inspirational content with people. And eventually I started my business in 1999, which is like long time ago. And at that time again, I was the only black speaker in the circuit. So it was something that was like really odd, because a lot of people would say to me, "So what do you do?" I say, "No, I speak." They say, "Okay, no, that's fine." They say, "But what is your job? Where do you work?" I say, "I speak," And people never used to believe that one could become a speaker and become professional and earn a living. And from then onwards, I just focused on building a global business. And I then achieved, by 2013 or so, I was really at the top of the food chain, in the continent and around the world. So officially, I'm still the highest designated professional speaker in the continent. And like Barry said, I've traveled the world. I've worked with over 30 million people, both online, offline. I've written 2 best-selling books. Yes, I've worked with small companies, municipalities, solopreneurs, multi-billion organizations like Airbus, like HSBC, like Daimler Chrysler, like Standard Bank, like NetBank, like the real SAA before it went down. So, my journey has just been that. So I've been up and down, just working with people. and being excited about contributing to the dreams of other people and making sure that they manifest the greatness that they were born to become.
So,
Yeah.
so Bill, tell us, let's go back to the early years when you started, 1999, you started speaking, and I know it was that magic story that everything went well. 6 months later, you followed the 7 principles of highly successful people. You became an incredible success overnight, and you were a multimillionaire. Yes? No?
Absolutely.
But isn't that what everyone expects, Billy?
So here's a funny thing. There's a story within a story. So when I decided I'm going to follow this path, I wanted to become an example of the content I was going to teach. Because how do you stand on stage and say, I'm going to teach about sales, but I've never sold even 1 teaspoon? So I then decided I'm going to go and take my knowledge, the content that I have, apply it and see if it cannot make things happen for me. So I joined a business, and the deal that I had with the business, that if I was able to turn around their sales or double them within a period of time, I'll own 50% of that organization. And they laughed at me because they never thought it was possible. And in exactly 5.5, I doubled the sales of that organization, and I was a 50% shareholder, and I became an instant millionaire. 6 months. And then I cashed out. Then I sold my shares and I took the money, but in exactly 6 months again, I lost everything. So then it was, okay, so what do you do? How do you do this thing? How do you get back? But here's one thing that I say to people. I say, the mind is an amazing machine. Once the mind breaks the formula of doing something, if there's a glitch in the system, the mind always knows how to go back and make it happen. So I had made money. I proved them that it can be done, but I lost it again. And I said, now I wanted to create a system. I wanted to systematize my process and now follow my system and don't deviate from it and see if I cannot do the same thing again. And then I had the 7 power principles, which then became a book called From Barefoot to Snakeskin Shoes. Then I followed exactly the same principle. And now I started to create wealth in a sustainable way. It was no longer a get-rich-quick scheme. It was no longer a luck. It was now systematic and sustainable. And everybody wanted to hear the story of how I did it. And that's how my profile grew in the speaking industry. And everybody around the world wanted to hear the story of this guy who's from a township, did not have the right kind of education, came from a poor family, but he was able to make it happen.
So if I get you, what I hear is right up front, so you went out, you made a success, and then you lost it all. And one of the reasons was mindset. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I get from you most importantly is that you went out and realized that you had to earn the right. You had to earn the right by becoming, and you and I have spoken about this a lot, haven't we? Becoming a real speaker, a real teacher, a real entrepreneur. And how many of you realize there's a lot of fake people out there? Okay, how many of you have come across many fake people? How many of you have stood or sat in a seminar and you stand and there's someone on the stage and there's something that tells you the story is good, but there's something about them that just doesn't add up. It's not authentic. And this ability to earn the right, because a lot of people aren't earning the right, they're faking the right. And one of the things that I've loved about you, Billy, is that you have gone out, you went out, you earned the right, to stand up, to teach, to train. So in that journey of earning the right, what were some of the key principles that you followed?
The first one, Barry, was about being intentional. A lot of people are not intentional. And let me break it down by what I mean by being intentional. So success is not accidental. You don't wake up one day, you're driving to work or you're driving to a seminar and you collide with success and suddenly things have happened. That's not what happens. So being intentional means I had to have clarity of thought. My mind had to be clear. I had to know exactly what is it that I wanted out of life. There had to be clarity, And in a lot of cases, when I speak to a lot of people, I realize that a lot of people don't have clarity in whatever journey that they're taking because there's no intention behind it, So for me, I realized that I made a deal with myself that I wanted to be at the top of the food chain as far as speaking is concerned. And so that was my intention. Now the question was, now that I had a clear intention, how was I going to do this? Now, every one of us as human beings, our greatest way to learn is through modeling. learning from others that have walked the path, taking one or two things from them and learning. So I Googled, well, was it Google at that time? I don't know. No, it was not Google, but you searched. I searched for, what did you do? How did we do this thing? I asked a question about who are the top 20 speakers in the world. And at that time, there were magazines, you know, like conference speaking magazines that used to be published and sent to people.
That's what you went on, Billy. You didn't go on Google. You went on, you faxed somebody and they faxed you back a week later and told you.
Exactly. And they sent me a letter with a list. So I then searched and found out who were the top 20 speakers in the world. And by the way, that was also looking at the great grandmasters, the Jim Rohn, the Og Mandinos, the Zig Ziglars, the Charlie Tremendous Jones, all of those forefathers, the founding fathers, you know, the Cavett Roberts of this world. So those were the founding forefathers. Those were the guys that set the tone for all of us, the Paul J. Mayers. But I then said, in the time and era that I am, who are the top 20 in the world? Then I found this top 20. Then I said, I needed to learn what these top 20 guys do. Who do they hang around with? What do they read? You know, anything and everything about them. And the intention was, I'm going to look at one complete person, but I'm always going to take one or two things from them that resonates with me, with my life, with my style, with my journey. And I'm going to take those things and apply them in my life. So that's it. So first you must be intentional, then you have clarity, and then you find out who are the best of the best in the path that you're taking. You know, I was working with a team of salespeople, and I then asked them, you know, what is your intention for your sales journey as a sales professional? And they were not clear. And I said to them, guys, if you're not clear, you're not going to really get to the top of the game. And then I asked them this question. I said, who are the top salespeople that you know in the world? And they didn't know anybody. So I said, what's going to make you a top salesperson if you don't find out who are the best and you begin to study them? And they didn't. So for me, it was clear. I found these top guys and I studied them. And why did I study these people? Because I'd made a very clear intention that I wanted to become the best of the best. Now, once that journey began, I then realized that most of these guys had organizations behind them. You know, all you do was to see a speaker in front of a stage or a speaker in a one-pager, but they had a very powerful organization behind them. It's like a boxer, it's like a soccer player, it's like a musician. You only see them on stage or you see them, you know, producing a song, but there's a producer, there's a writer, there's an engineer, there's all kinds of people. Then I realized that I needed a team behind me. But I didn't have the money, I didn't have the resources to build a team. And now I realize that if you don't have the money to build a team, you can go into strategic partnership with people that have a team already. So my first strategic partners was an organization called the Win-Win Group. And a guy called Steve Carver was the CEO. And I went to him, and actually, no, let me unpack the story, which is really funny. So I'm driving around Bryanston. In my head, I'm intentional. What am I searching for? I'm searching for an organization that can become my partner to help me to get to where I want to go. So now, when you drive with an intention, you're not driving aimlessly. When you drive with an intention, the vibration of your brain connects with the vibration of the people that you need to connect with, and then there's a pull or an attraction towards those people. So I'm driving down main road in Bryanston, and I see this massive billboard, Win-Win Group, theater, training, blah, blah, blah. And I say, wow, this is it. I go into there, I park my car, walk in, I go to the reception, and I say to the reception lady, hi, how are you? My name is Billy Selekane. Excuse me, who's the CEO of this company? And this lady says, the CEO is Steve Carver. And I say, can I see him? And this lady says, you don't even know him. I've just told you. And they say, when I see him, no, you've got to make an appointment. Now, as she's talking, next to the reception, there are bathrooms. And a guy comes out of the bathroom. He picks up the phone and says, Steve Carver speaking. And I realize that's the guy. The call lasts for less than a couple of seconds. When he drops the call, I march to him. And I say, hi, Steve. My name is Billy Selekane. I want to be the best motivational speaker on the continent. And I believe you can help me. This guy looks at me and thinks, oh, my God. He stretches his hand, we shake hands and says, come and see me after 2 weeks. I get out of there, I'm excited because I was intentional. I wanted an organization that can become my backup. So when you are intentional, this thing called serendipity happens. Things fall into place and congruency becomes the order of the day.
So
2 weeks
Billy,
later,
just on that, how many people would have said to you, Billy, you got lucky? How many we get that?
Everybody says that.
Billy got lucky. Billy got lucky. Billy got lucky. But if you really get this message, it's intentional. How many of you are not going about life intentional? You're going about life because you're doing what you're doing, but you're not intentional. And you know, in this, those of you that have spent any time in here, you'll know that Nicole teaches about presence, your ability to be absolutely present in the moment. And what I get from you, Billy, you were driving around Bryanston, present in the moment, intentional, looking for what you needed to look for, and it arrived. Most people are just Billy, how many times do you hear people say opportunities don't come, but they're not looking for the opportunities, are they?
And by the way, opportunity travels in one straight line. It doesn't make a U-turn. When opportunity comes to you and you're not ready, it goes to the next person who's ready. It never makes a U-turn. And that's what people don't understand. So for me, Barry, when that happened, because I was not taking a chance, and I, you know, one of the things that I would ask people that I work with, some people would say, I want to be rich. I say, wow, that's amazing. And I say, so what does it mean to be rich? And then they'll say, you know, Mr. Selekane, I want to afford things. Then I say, afford what? What things do you want to afford? Again, you understand that when you ask people these questions, the answers are consistently ambiguous. It's consistently like a wish. It's like, I wish, like one day, like things are going to happen. It's never going to happen unless you're intentional. You know, I had a call, an email a couple of weeks ago, and I read it. I thought, I'm going to, and then this guys kept sending me emails. I thought, let me read these guys' emails. They run a publishing house, and the email said, Mr. Selekane, we run a publishing house. We've published 20 books, and they mentioned the people that they published, blah, 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 would like to publish your work. Can we have a meeting? So I thought, that's very interesting. Then I said, okay, gentlemen, let me meet you and let me give you the benefit of the doubt, you know. And I met this gentleman and we had lunch, and I said to them, so what is your intention about me? And they said, we want to publish your work. And I said, which work do you want to publish? They said, we're not sure, maybe a memoir, you know, maybe something that you're working on. And then I said to them, but you're not intentional. You didn't think this thing very thorough. You didn't sit down and say, this is Billy Selekane. These are the things that he's doing. Which of the things that he's doing has got the capacity for us to produce a product that the world may want? And therefore, we're going to pitch a product to him. So that, and I said to them, you were not intentional. You were just taking chances, sending emails and hoping that I was going to respond. And by the way, I responded because you sent 7 emails. I was counting. Because if you send 2 emails and never send the 3rd, 4th, I was never going to bother because clearly you were not serious about what you're doing. So we spent like 2 hours just unpacking intentionality. And when they walked out of there, I'd given them a strategy of how, going forward, they should position themselves as a publishing business that is very intentional. So everything goes back to the fact that if you do not know what you want, it's like going into a restaurant. Do you go to a restaurant and you sit down and the waiter comes to you and says, say, can we help you? Or ma'am, can we help you? Then you say to the lady, yes, I'm hungry, I want food. You don't do that. You look at the menu, you either have a starter, main course, and dessert, or you have a main course only, and you choose a particular main course because you are being intentional. Now, people become intentional on trivial things, but they become unintentional on life-changing things. So if you are not intentional about your life, if you do not have clarity, and if you do not have people that you model, that you learn from, then you're just a maybe kind of person. You are a one-day kind of person. You are the kind of person that hope that one day I'm going to be lucky. And luck is a promise of fools, my good ladies and gentlemen.
Say that again, Billy.
Luck is a promise of fools. Because the great Gary Player, one journalist was interviewing him after he won a very big tournament. And this journalist says, Mr. Player, you must be a very lucky person to have won it. And Gary Player said to this journalist, you know what's funny? The harder I practice, the luckier I become. So luck is a promise of fools. He practiced his hands, he was able to produce the kind of play that it did for him to become a champion.
So, Billy, I want to unpack this a little bit. This model, the best, I think is very powerful. I mean, you know my journey. I found Blair Singer. I modeled Blair for many years. Followed a similar path to your thinking, and it's an area that people in today's world are so stuck in being themselves, that they, recently I studied a book by Robert Greene called Mastery. And Greene unpacks and says the very first step to mastery is apprenticeship. And that's really what modeling is, isn't it? It's becoming an apprentice and really understanding and following and doing what the master does. And that's what you did, didn't you? You found, you haven't told us who you followed. I know who you followed, but you haven't told us who you followed yet. But you went into this area of apprenticeship, didn't you?
Absolutely. And by the way, here's what I always tell people. The greatest, the founder of multi-level marketing, the person that came with this model, and he mastered it so well that there's over 3 billion people that follow this, is Jesus Christ. What did he do? He intentionally chose 12 guys, spend time, copious amount of time, investing in these 12 guys. When they were ready, he said to them, each one of you, find 2 that you can make your apprentice. And so it went, and so it went. But here's the thing. A lot of people don't have the capacity for apprenticeship because they're not humble enough. They don't want to humble themselves under somebody because they feel they're demeaning themselves. They're becoming less by serving somebody else who's at a level that they're in. And that's where the challenge is. People are not willing. They're not humble enough to follow other people. And people want this thing to happen very quickly. People think they can do what you do in 6 months, Barry. People think they can do what I do in 8, 10 months, whatever. We've seen them try. We've seen them get on stages and bomb out. We've seen them disappear, literally disappear, because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes time, it takes your personal investment, and it takes a lot of sacrifice.
And Billy, this is not only about speaking or teaching and training. This is applicable to any business. This is applicable to any part. You don't even have to own your own business. You can be an employee. You've got to find someone that you want to model. You want to become a CEO. You got to find a CEO that you're going to model. And if you see this we see this all the time in the corporate world. People are so into backstabbing the person who's above them so that they can get above them, and they're not prepared to learn. You have to be teachable, don't you, Billy?
Absolutely. And Barry, it goes back to, humility. It's something that a lot of people have a false sense of belief that humility is weakness. Actually, humility is power. Because when you're humble, you're opening yourself up. It's like you're opening your heart. And when the heart is open, it is willing to become a receptor of great content, great advice, and the power of modeling. And once you do that, then you'll be able to make it happen. Now, here's the thing. One of the things that I'm doing, I'm diversifying. During lockdown, I used to do a lot of cooking on Facebook. People says, you must have your own restaurant, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, how am I going to do that? Then I've got a friend of mine who has 2 restaurants. Then I went to him and said, you know what? You know me, I like cooking, I do whatever. Now I think I want to open a restaurant. What do you think I should be doing? And I said, good. What you should be doing, you should be spending at least 2 days a week here with me. That's all you should be doing. And you should bring a notepad. And you should ask as many questions as you can. And you should take copious notes. You should record some of your notes on your phone. And that process started happening as soon as we went to, I think, level, whatever, when we were able to go. I would spend literally every day, even if it's not a full day, I'll be doing my things and I'll get onto my car and I'll go to this guy's restaurant and I'll be there. And I'll ask him, what do you need to do? Say, pack that, fill up the fridge, check this, this is how we bring. So I had to go through a kind of a master class of how a restaurant operates. And then I said, okay, by the way, so when I set this thing up, he says, yeah, set it up. I'll help you hire the right people, but the mentorship has not ended. It will continue to happen for as long as you are willing to learn. So the journey still continues. So I'm getting into a different business because I love food, but I don't know how restaurant works. Now this guy is becoming a big coach or the mentor for the whole restaurant. And for me, I'm going to be cooking once or twice, whatever. My sister's going to be running this thing full time, but she also is spending time with this guy who's been in this business for more than 20 years.
But I'm going to hazard a guess that part of that mentor, part of that apprenticeship has been washing dishes, cleaning floors, wiping, and that's a lot of things that people don't want to do. They in our profession, people want to be the star on the stage, but they're not prepared to do what got the star on the stage. Yeah. People want to learn how to sell, but they want to close the multi-million-dollar deal without learning how to close $200 deal and the $100 deal. Would you agree with that?
Actually, Barry, when I was in that restaurant in one of the times, I was helping to take the trash out. And I was pushing, this big trash dustbins, and I was pushing them out and whatever. This one guy says, I think I know you, and I was like, I says, yeah, you know me, of course. And he says, so what are you doing here? I said, what do you think I'm doing here? So he was like, oh my God. And I was not dressed like this because I'm going to get my hands dirty. I was dressed very casual or whatever. So I said to him, no, I'm here as an apprentice. And this guy was like, really? I said, yeah. So you could see that in this guy's brain, because he knows me as a particular person who does particular things, my dress code and everything, for him to see me being that humble, it blew him. It was like, oh my God. And I said, no, I'm coming here to learn because I'm about to open my restaurant. And I could see this guy's brain was almost, when we were young, we used to read comic books and somebody's thinking we could see bubbles on the head. I could almost see bubbles going all over his head because he didn't understand it, because he thought when a person is at a certain level, they cannot go down to a level of really being an apprentice and learning the real basics of how to do something great.
So Billy, what I take away from what you just said is, and I see this so often, people think they've arrived in one area, which they have. So you're a highly accomplished speaker, you're a world-renowned trainer, but just because you've arrived in one area doesn't mean you've arrived in the other. And that's an area that so many people get that. That's where humility comes in, and the ego gets in the way, and people are too big. They become way too big to humble themselves to learn other things. And is that a big mistake that you see with so many people in the journey to success?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, because they're not willing to learn to get into the second career or the second thing, when that thing goes belly up, it completely obliterates everything they built through the years. That's the big mistake that many people do. And because many people like to be, just because I spend time on stage and I'm going to have a restaurant, it doesn't mean I'm going to be the person in front of the restaurant. They might not even see me. They might see me once a week. Maybe because I was cooking food for myself, that food was nice to me. Maybe to other people it's going to be bad. So I've decided that before I cook for people, I'm going to have a test audience. I'm going to have 3 or 4 of my friends. I'm going to say, okay, guys, now I'm cooking for you as an audience. Tell me if this food makes sense or not. And now they'll click me. I'm
waiting for my invite.
It's on the post. It's on the post.
You're sending a fax.
Yes. No, I'm sending a post. Only if the South African Post Office can find the letter and find your address and deliver it.
So Billy, how many of you are getting lots of value out of this? How many of you can see a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of wisdom coming from Billy? So Billy, so be intentional, have absolute clarity, model the best. Your 4th one, I think if I got it down, was to find a strategic partner.
Yeah.
So who did you model, Billy?
I modeled many people, but the one that I got very close to was Les Brown.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Les Brown is my big mentor, and we spent some time together on the platform, mechanics, speaking, whatever. But on building a powerful organization was Dr. Nido Kubein, who became my longest coach. Of all the people that have coached and mentored me, I've worked with Nido Kubein much longer than a lot of them. And even now, I still, actually every second year, I get invited to High Point University to teach at his university. So every second year, I'm in North Carolina, High Point, and I teach it. It's very cool. Actually, the funny thing is, if I was using my phone, I could show you. They've even sent me a beautiful thing that says visiting scholar. So, I'm a visiting scholar at High Point University.
Language is important, isn't it?
It is.
Next, they're going to give you a PhD, Billy.
Yes, I hope that happens. I thought the University of Venda would give me that, but they're slow,
So Billy, in your journey to success, what else? So you made a strategic partnership, and then
Number five, you have to understand the science and the art of the craft. No, not the science like in science, the science like in science.
Oh, the science.
Yes.
Okay, good. My ears don't work the older I get, really.
Cool.
Science. Oh, there we go. So the science and the art.
Yeah. So for me, when all of this fell into place, now I was intentional. I knew where I was going. I was modeling the best. I had a strategic partner. Now it was time for me to really move to the level of being a craftsman, to being at the top of the food chain. Now, as a speaker, you must understand that there are two global organizations that are sort of in charge of speaking. There's the Toastmasters, which is the amateur part, you know, and then there's the National Speakers Association of America, which became the forebearer of other professional bodies around the world. Now, you cannot become a true professional if you have not studied the basics from Toastmasters, because Toastmasters, everybody, I mean, Cavett Robert, who started the NSA, was a Toastmaster. So I then, you know, actually the funny thing, Barry, is before I even knew of the existence of Toastmasters, they gave me an award in 2009 or something like that. It's called the Golden Gavel. They call it the Communication and Leadership Award. They give it to somebody who has done well as a leader, as a communicator. Bishop Tutu has it, F.W. Clerk, Pasisana. They gave it to somebody recently, Wilson Binkosi from Radio Metro. You know, so they gave it to me at that time, and I didn't even know who they were. I just got a call and say, hey, how are you? Fine. We're from the Toastmasters. We've been watching your work. There's 5 of you that have been nominated for this award. You must come to Cape Town on this date, and then in that date, we'll decide who becomes the winner. And I'm thinking, but who are these guys? Then I started to say, oh my God, this is the Toastmasters. These are the foundation of speaking and whatever. Then I went to Cape Town, and out of the 5 people they chose, I was the person that was awarded. So then I started to deep dive the science through Toastmasters. And the Toastmasters have got a very simple philosophy. Their keynotes are 7 minutes. So they say in 7 minutes, you're going to use 150 words per minute to create a 7 minutes keynote. So you can go online on Toastmasters and check their world champions in 7 minutes, baby. Now, in the professional world, we have 60 minutes to deliver a keynote, minimum. And then it's a half a day workshop, full day workshop, whatever. Now, you take that 150 multiplied by 60, it becomes 9,000 words for a keynote. But here's the thing, it's not words verbatim. You've got to deliver. Now, in delivering this 60 minutes, which is literally the 150 multiplied by 60 becomes 9,000, you then go back and say, what is the art which is mixed with the science for me to deliver this? Because sometimes your body becomes an expression of your words, tonality and whatever. So 5 things: auditory, how you use your voice, projections, you know the story. How do you tell stories? You know, how do you connect with people? How do you tell humor? The second one is around visual aids. What you do in Barry. Everybody who knows Barry, know you're the guy, the flip chart guy. You know, that's who you are. You stand, you're wearing your Uncovering Greatness t-shirt, everything matches the blue, the cocky pen, there's a green cocky pen. So everything about you and your visual is very intentional, isn't it? It's not accidental.
Definitely not accidental.
And people don't understand that there's a science behind it. Because cognitively, when I'm watching you speak, and the green, the blue, the jacket, the black, the cocky pen, so everything is aligned. Now, in my mind, I'm going to remember your content by attaching it to these small little nuances, the color, the whatever. So the visual side of who you are as a speaker and a teacher, it's very, very important. Now, you know me, I'm always wearing a suit and a tie and whatever, and everybody knows me to be that guy wearing a suit and a tie on stage. And it's just that I'm not using my laptop, I'm using this big Apple Macintosh. There are 2 pictures of me, same keynote, different places, but the difference between the pictures, it's a millionth of a second. And I spend half a day training speakers on that. Everything there is standard, everything's the same. But the difference is in one, I'm beginning the point, and in the other, I'm ending the point. The difference is a millionth of a second. My dress code, where my tie lands in my trousers, the same. My cufflinks are exactly the same. My jacket exactly the same. Everything is 100% the same, because it's a branding and visual process that you sit down and you engineer. Because anybody that has seen me, they pick up all these little nuances, and that helps them to remember the message. So that's the visual part. Then comes the kinesthetics, the movement. how you control and command your stage, how you tell your stories, how you move forward. And when I train speakers, this part is what we call platform mechanics. So I teach them the size of the stage, that the stage it's usually 4, 8, 16, 32. That's how stages are built. And therefore, you've got to understand that you've got to be in the middle. You've got to now take your stories and your humor, put them all over the show. When I'm telling this particular joke, I'm going to move this direction. And why am I moving this direction? Because audiences sit according to their brain profile. People don't know that. But I know that why? Because I did a deep dive on the science. So when I get into a room and on stage, I know exactly how to connect with people because it's what I've done. Okay, so and then there's the intellectual, then there's the content of what I'm delivering. Now, content without connection, without emotion becomes, I don't know, like biltong. I don't know. Content without emotion becomes dry, So you've got to tell people serious content, which is transformational. However, you've got to align and attach emotions because people connect with emotions more than they connect with data that is very, research-driven and stuff like that. So it's quite important that when you get into that content, it must be connected to your emotion, and that's quite critical. So for me, as a speaker, so after the K, you must put a C, which is the content.
So Billy, just on content, because I see this in sales. I mean, speaking on the stage is exactly the same environment as sitting one-on-one with someone because you embody all these as well.
Yeah.
Usually auditory, the kinesthetic, and the content. Too many people get lost in the content, don't they? They don't understand the science of this. They have great content, but their delivery sucks. The content is less important than everything else, isn't it?
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because remember, and here's what many people don't understand, Barry. As a speaker, when I'm on stage for 60 minutes, I'm literally competing with Hollywood. So someone goes to a cinema and watch a movie. When people are sitting and watching me, they expect a movie. They expect to laugh. They expect to understand there's a protagonist, there's an antagonist, there's a climax, there's an anticlimax. All of those things must happen from me to them so that they can connect with me. But if I don't understand the science, I mean, one of the things I did was to go to Hollywood and study the ABCD of storytelling, spend time with directors. I went to theater in the Globe Theater in London. I spent a lot of time in New York City at the Phantom of the Opera. What am I doing there? Deep diving the science so that when I do the art, I respect the foundation of the science. After the content comes the connection, which is the emotion. So it is very, very critical for me as a speaker and for us as teachers to always show up authentically so that the audience can see themselves in you in an achievable and possible way. So if I get on stage and say, hey guys, how are you? I'm running this big business, make $2 billion, blah, 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 the jet, and I've got all this. You're going to look at me and say, oh my God, I can't do those things. Wow, 2 billion, I'm going to get 2 billion. So we need to be relatable. Now, when you are relatable, you're creating this thing called Me Too moments so that the person can understand, oh my God. So I stand on stage and tell people the worst thing that happened to me when I was starting as a speaker, where I really made a mess. And so that people can understand that I'm not now at the top because I never made a mess. I made unbelievable mistakes, but I learned from those mistakes and I corrected them. Because when you do that, you're giving people the permission to fail forward, not fail backwards. Because we will fail, Barry. COVID came, people lost businesses, we will fail, but we've got to understand that we can't fail backwards, but we have to fail forwards. So for me, understanding the science and the art so that you can become the true craftsman or craftswoman on the path that you've chosen, it's sacrosanct. You can fail on anything and everything, but you have to deep dive the science and the art for you to get to the level of craftsmanship.
That's very powerful, Billy. And as you're talking, and I'm just thinking of you now going into the restaurant business. If you guys get this is applicable in any business. This is not just teaching on stage. This is not just about selling. You walk into a restaurant, it's visual, it's auditory, it's what do you see, it's what do you hear, it's how do you feel. Then's the content. How many of you ever walked into a restaurant and you didn't have a great feeling, and the food might have been really good, but your experience wasn't that good? So the content was actually lessened. You get that? And the emotion. People walk up when you have a problem. Do they solve it? Do they solve it fast? And so any business that you have, any environment that you have, really, this is true in any environment, isn't it?
Absolutely. And Barry, by the way, when we talk about this, so I usually say to people, whatever that you're doing, you might be in teaching, but be careful, because there might be somebody in that audience that is a practitioner of what you do, and they're at a different level. So again, if you go to the content and the emotions, so I'll go to this restaurant and I order a drink, and they bring me this drink, and this drink is flat. And I said to this guy, my good sir, this drink is flat. This guy said, what do you mean this drink is flat? I say, well, if you don't know this drink is flat, then I'd like to speak to the barman. Then I go to the barman and say, my good sir, this drink is flat. The barman says, what do you mean this drink is flat? I said, how long have you been a barman? So that's my question to this guy. He says he's been doing it for about 3-4 years. I said, well, then you don't understand your business. Then I said, I'm going to give you flat drink 101. Then I explained to him why the drink is flat. And I actually even told him why the drink is flat. Then this guy said, oh my God, I didn't know that, because he was using a draft from a keg. Now, the 2 or 3 last drinks from the keg, it is very low, it becomes flat. The first 1 or 2, when the keg is open, it must be bleeded, it must be bled, it must go, they must take out this thing so that the freshness of the drink inside, swells, and those bubbles, which the science behind it, can then bring the freshness of the drink. And this guy's a barman, and he didn't know that. And he says, so how do you know this? I said, my man, what do you mean? I enjoy this drink. So therefore, anything that I like to do, I'd like to know more about it. Because I want to go to a place and I get given bad treatment and I accept it. And that's the thing, a lot of people in their workplaces are not working towards craftsmanship. They are just there to earn a salary because they've got nothing else to do. And that's what the challenge we have in this country and in the continent. That each and every one, if you are a sweeper, if you are a person who makes chips, if you're a person who makes burgers, I'm a regular at Rocco Mama's in Glenmarais. It's managed by a friend of mine. Now, the staff there, we've built such a rapport that they always come to me and say, hey, what can I learn from you today? Because I tell them, you have to be intentional. You have to be intentional. You cannot just do things unintentional and hope that things will just work, So yeah, it's quite critical for you to understand the science and the art on your path to becoming a craftsman so that people don't pull a fast one on you.
So Billy, you're talking a lot about food. I decided I'm going to have to be intentional in coming to pick you up every morning and take you to gym, because I'm getting a little bit worried about you, mate.
Yes, do that. No, do that. It's fine, do that.
So how many of you are getting a lot of value out of this? Yeah, so let me show you, Billy, just while you're there, who you're speaking to. And there's the room, our circle of influence. So just in case for a moment you thought that you were just speaking to me. So Billy, you understand the science, you understand the art of the craft, and that's an area that so many people fall down because they don't really. That's true knowledge, isn't it? That's that step from information, from knowing about it to actually knowing how to do it. And many people miss that piece, don't they? They don't get true knowledge, and that cannot be done in 7 steps overnight by reading my book. It doesn't matter what, I don't know, certain gurus will tell you. It's a journey in time, isn't it? You can compress it, you can spend more time on it, you can compress it, you can manage it, but it is a journey in time, isn't it?
It is. And by the way, this journey, guys, it matures in its own, Because as you keep doing this, then there's a law that takes effect. That law is called the law of compound. Now, the law of compound says, so for argument's sake, I usually say to people, when I get into a room, I can tell people eat Kentucky or not. Because a couple of Kentucky beggars compound and something happens to you. You know what I'm trying to say? So.
Same as Rocco Mamas, Bill.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, they do me the healthy kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So everything that you do consistently all the time, it has to compound. And one day that compound becomes an explosion, literally. And suddenly you think, oh my God, I can do this. But you didn't do it now. You started doing it then, 1 day at a time, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and then it became compound. You know, a friend of mine says to me, it took 2 years to run the Comrades Marathon. And he tells me how he did it. It's quite amazing. He said when he started, he was running 2 kilometers per day every second day. So Monday, 2 kilometers, Wednesday, 2 kilometers, Friday, 2 kilometers. He said he did that for a month. He said after a month, he ran 5 kilometers. 5 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 5 kilometers. In the third month, he says he ran 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers, 10 kilometers. Okay, it says by the 9th month, he was running 25 kilometers per day. And what he told me was fascinating. He says, the most difficult time was the first 5 kilometers. But then he says, after I break the 5 kilometers jinx, he says, it just became automatic. I said, no, it's not automatic. It is the effect of the power of compound, because you've been compounding this and suddenly you make it happen. And he went in and ran the Comrade Marathon and he ran it on record time. So everything, when you keep doing it, it compounds, the results show up. That's why I say to people, it takes 20 years to become an overnight success.
Say that again, Billy.
It takes 20 years to become an overnight success.
So, Billy, what I'm hearing is the importance of action and continued action.
If you can't do the big action, do the small actions consistently. That's what you need, consistency.
So you kicked off, you got on stages, you started speaking, and I'm going to hazard a guess that it wasn't only on the big stages, you got on whatever stage you could in order to perfect your art, yes?
I would speak to 3 people like I'm speaking to 1,000 people. No excuse. I will deliver exactly the same keynote with exactly the same energy, the same passion for 3 people that I would for 10,000 people, that I would for 20,000 people.
See,
you know, because one of the mistakes that we do, yes, that's it. One of the mistakes that we do, and I'll give an example. I once gave a keynote in Polokwane, and this friend of mine had organized a seminar, whatever, but things didn't work well. I think we had about 9 people and blah, blah, blah. But I was on stage and I delivered. Little did I know, like I keep saying, you don't know who's in the audience. One of the people in the audience, their father was a CEO somewhere. And this person after the keynote came back to me and says, oh my God, I've never, ever seen anybody do what you do. I'm gonna talk to my father. And I didn't know who his father was. And I said, I'm gonna talk to my father. And said, actually, give me 5 minutes. I need to talk to him now. Then after 5 minutes, he came back and says, my father wants to talk to me. Gave me his phone and says, hey, how are you? Fine. His father was one of the CEOs at then Exaro. He was an interim CEO of Exaro. Then we started talking. Then I got a big deal out of an audience of 9 people.
There we go. And Billy, how many times would people have been upset? They would have dropped their bundle. They would have been all pissed off.
Oh no, guys!
Bring me here, da 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 da, and they actually don't understand. They don't understand the science and the art of the craft, do they?
My industry, Barry, me and you, we know we work with big prima donnas. We work with guys with an ego so big it cannot fill that room. We know that, and it is the saddest thing because it creates a bad rap for a lot of other people. But people know who are the authentic guys. You know, that's it. People know who are the prima donnas and people who know who are the real things. And by the way, if you go to the US, which I spend a lot of time going to the US, as you know, in the US, I mean, there's a thing called something, the red list or something, where you say, I want this kind of a bed, this kind of a water, this kind of what. You know, when I first got this list, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I phoned this agent. I said, no, but I'm okay. What will they be serving? And this woman was saying, you're going to get so much work from us because we're tired of people telling us about a kind of pillowcase. Sleeping in a pillow is sleeping in a pillow. End of story. Doesn't mean you're going to have a nightmare, And people being people, they all have their own issues. They want this and they don't want that. But me and you, we're very simple. We show up, we do what needs to be done.
I think that's so important. You guys get this, the difference between real and fake. How many of you can see that this guy is very real? He's real. He is who he is. I know that when I sit down with Billy, wherever we sit down, this is Billy. This is who I get. What I do know is when he gets on the stage, he is always wearing a suit. He's always smart. What he knows is when I get on the stage, I dress like this. That's who we are. But the reality is I don't pull off a suit like Billy pulls off a suit. And Billy probably doesn't pull off jeans and sneakers like I pull off jeans and sneakers. Doesn't mean,
Absolutely.
But if you guys get it, we are who we are and we're comfortable within who we are. We're not trying to pretend to be somebody else. And so many people, Billy, isn't that the mistake in business, are trying to pretend to be who they think their clients want them to be, but they actually don't know who their clients really are.
Yeah. You can't, guys, be authentic, be true to who you are. People want the real you because there's only one of you. There's no other specimen of a human being like you. There's only one of you. So be authentic.
So, and I'll say it again, that's applicable to any business. Doesn't matter what your business is. You run a restaurant, that's a restaurant. You run network marketing business, you got to be authentic. You're looking for the people who are looking for you, and deliver. I love that story, Billy, of speaking to three people. I can remember I came back from a couple of years ago. I came back from speaking in Australia with Robert and Kim Kiyosaki, and I was on the top of the world, and we had a great trip, and the girls had been with me, and I arrived back, and I had a preview event, which is as you know, I run a lot of free events and preview, and I arrived, and for some reason my team hadn't sold into it and whatever, and I arrived at this event, and there were three people there, and I've always had this view that I'll never cancel an event. I will always teach, whether there's one, or as Billy says, 1 or 10,000, doesn't actually matter. And there were three people, and one of them happened to be a speaker who had come to check out what I do. And at the end of it, he said to me, "I'm a little bit disappointed." I said, "Why?" He said, "I would have thought someone of your stature could have got a lot more than three people." I said, "Thank you for your feedback. I actually just want to thank you for coming, because if you didn't come, I would have only had two." And the reality is there's this expectation that people are just going to rock up because you're speaking. And guess what? If you have the ability of sitting in front of somebody when you're selling your product, be grateful that somebody is sitting in front of you. Be grateful that there's somebody there to listen to you. Be grateful that there's somebody there to allow you to do the art and the craft that you are doing. And Billy, that I think that's just such a powerful lesson. It comes back. I'm getting this today. It's about humility, isn't it? Doesn't matter where you are in business. Doesn't matter what business you run. It is about being humble.
Yeah, and me and you have worked with the best of the best in the world. And my gold standard is Dr. Nido Kubeni. He's a billionaire, but when he sits with you, he's authentic. So anybody else, I'm thinking, here's a guy, maybe makes 5 million a year. Listen, you're playing a small game. 5 million is like how much? It's, I don't know, $100,000. You're playing a small game. You're thinking you're playing a big game. You're not playing a big game. So we've got to always stay true to ourselves. Because again, I keep saying to people, you don't know who's in the audience. You don't know who you're talking to. You don't know what kind of influence they have. You don't know what kind of reach they have.
Yeah, and so often we get that wrong with our own perceptions, don't we?
Yeah.
I can remember rocking up to cricket when I lived in Zimbabwe, and I was just started out in business, and I rocked up to a game of cricket, and there was a guy there in slops and a pair of shorts and a tatty hat, and he was acting very unruly, and I said to someone, "Who's that?" He said, "That's one of the richest guys in the country. He's one of the largest chicken farmers on this continent," and we get too lost in judging a book by its cover, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
In our perceptions, instead of actually just meeting people for who they are and where they're at and connecting.
Absolutely.
So, Bill, do you have a little bit of time to take 1 or 2 questions?
Yes, we can take, I've got about 5 minutes. Yeah, we can take some
Okay,
questions.
so any questions in the audience? Anyone have a question? Kim?
I'd like to know why people sit in a certain spot in the room according to their brain function.
You have to pay me lots of money for me to teach you that. Okay, so human beings, we've got our, the four archetypes. And those 4 archetypes that gives us our personalities and our character, we find our safe spaces. All right? So we see it according to our own safety, based on our archetype. It's a long story, but that's how we behave. Even when you go to a party, everywhere where human beings are gathering, they will always stand or sit in a space where they feel safe, because there's a psychological kind of protection for them, because that's their place of comfort. And if you know the 4 archetypes, when you're looking at an audience, you can tell exactly who's sitting where, and then you know how to speak to them in what language and in what emotion.
Get that, Kim?
Yeah.
So you got to, again, it's understanding people. It's having people skills. The ability to build a business, the ability to build a team is to increase your level of people skills, and you got to understand where people sit.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Hang on.
Yes. I just want to find out something, because I've heard about the success story. Very, very pleasant. I'm very inspired, by the way. There's one thing that I just want to know from Billy. How have you handled failure? Because I know success will come.
He says,
how have you handled failure on your journey to success?
failure is an event. Failure is not failure. That's why I'm saying fail forward. You are going to fail. That's a given. So let me tell you what failure is. When you bake bread, there's one ingredient. Without that ingredient, bread never happens. It's called self-raising flour. It's that flour that makes the bread to really find its shape. That's failure. Failure teaches you how not to do that thing in the way that you did, but it also becomes an ingredient to uplift you to the next level. You are going to fail. That's guaranteed.
And Billy, the bigger the game you want to play, the bigger the failure, yes?
Absolutely.
You get that thing on? And you got to be prepared for failure, but it's up here, isn't it?
It's a psychological, it's a game of the mind. It's the game of the mind. It's an inside game. So once it happens to you, you've got to learn from it as quick as possible and move on. I mean, I have invested in stuff that blew in my face. And each time that happens, I call Uncle Jack, we have a little conversation, and I move on. His name is Daniels,
Yes, Billy, we've tried a few things that haven't worked, haven't we?
Me and you. Remember how much money we spent on launching an online TV channel? Barry, we were 3 years ahead of everybody, isn't it?
We were. Unfortunately, COVID didn't come at the right time, did it?
It didn't come at the right time.
So, but we got lessons. We built relationships. We connected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we still communicate with each other? Of course. Did we lose some money? Yes. Did we?
Yes.
But you move on. You take the failures and you learn. So doing on great. Yeah. Great question. Great question. So have you guys got a lot of value today?
Yeah. Can I ask?
Yes. Last one.
The last is okay. I just wanted to find, because I was asked, the first one I was saying about the failure, which is, thank you very much for the answer, the failure forward. But then when the going got tough throughout the journey, what kept you moving? Because there are people that give up. I think that one we know. If you were to study people, there are people that start something and along the way they give up. What is it that kept you moving or going on even when the going was tough at certain times?
Yeah, for me, my journey was no longer about me, but my journey was a promise to the African child that their dream can become possible. So I was going to be that catalyst. I was going to be that example of the power of possibility. So it was no longer about me. So if I had stopped when I failed, I would have disappointed, over, 350 million young Africans. And that that was just not going to happen. That was
You
just
have,
not,
you have a very strong mission, don't you, Billy?
absolutely.
You get that. And if you go back to what Billy talked about, he has clear clarity. He's very clear on what his mission is.
Yeah.
So people don't have a lot of clarity on their mission, do they, Billy? They focus on, for example, you'll speak to someone, you go, why are you doing what you're doing? So I can make money. Well, that's not a big enough mission. If you get it, Billy, you've always operated beyond yourself, haven't you?
Absolutely. Because, you know, Barry, I keep saying to people, if God made us human beings to become so powerful and think, and if all we want to do is to make money and buy cars, then we're a big disappointment to God.
Very profound.
Because, you know, ants, ants collect food for winter. They're very busy all the time, collecting food for winter. That's all they can do. They collect food for winter. So therefore, if what you want to do is just to make money, buy a house and a car, then you're an ant that is just bloated.
Does that give you an answer? So think on that. The bigger your mission, the more purpose you have, and it's in everything you do. The more purpose you have, the more you stay on track, the more you'll go and Billy, that helps you get through the failure, doesn't it? Because you're learning to get the bigger game.
It does, because every time I get a big setback, I say to myself, there's a child who's waking up today in the middle of nowhere, barefooted, who'd walk 20 kilometers to school, 20 kilometers back, probably did not eat lunch. I owe that child my story. I owe that child the fact that it is possible. And if I give up, I'm letting that child down.
And Billy, in that journey and in accomplishing that mission, it's okay to create success for yourself, isn't it?
You know what? You know me, Barry, my suits are tailor-made. You know my story. It's like, you know me. There's nothing wrong in enjoying the finer things in life. But life is not about the finer things. You know, we live amazing lives of life, first class, we fly in private jets and all these kind of things. But that's not what this is about. This is much more bigger than the finer things of life. Otherwise, if it was about the finer things of life, I'd just go and become a drug dealer, make more money quicker. Yeah, but I'll probably be shot or be taken to jail or whatever, you know. So I decided that's not a good career, you know.
Yeah, I heard that your second option was become a thug.
Yes, I tried it, by the way. I tried it and realized, man, the consequences are too tough here. I said, no, I'm going to quit. And I quit. I quit very early.
And something tells me I believe you. I've known you for long enough. So you guys had a good morning so far?
Yes.
Excellent. Can you join me in thanking Billy? Billy came on. He's this is because of the relationship that we have, and I just know that he loves sharing. How many of you got some incredible insight into success? And those of you that have never met Billy before, this is Africa's most successful speaker. You know, I can remember Billy telling me when he charged his first 250,000 Rand to stand on a stage for 60 minutes. And that's what a lot of people think. They think, oh, I can speak. Next week, I'm going to charge 250,000 Rand like Billy Selekane because I did a Toastmasters course. Okay, that's not what it takes. It takes 20 years of being intentional, 20 years of clarity, 20 years of modeling the best, 20 years of having strategic partnerships, 20 years of failure, 20 years of failure, 20 years of understanding the science and the art of the craft until you become a master. And that is the art of mastery. It doesn't matter what you do, and then you follow a mission. And when you do that, you create success. So, Billy, any last words of wisdom before we let you go?
Success is not an accident, it's intentional. The day you begin to become intentional about everything, you'll understand that success had already happened, but it was just waiting for you. Cool. Ladies and gents, can you join me in giving a massive round of applause? Yes, Barry, thank you very much. You're a superstar. Love you, my brother. Thank you, my friend. Be blessed, and we'll chat to you soon. And I can't wait to receive my letter in the post to come and test your food. It's on its way. Thanks, Billy. Cheers, pal. Bye. So,